The Pokemon World Championships is only 2 weeks away. It's time for the best of the best to go to London and play the highest stakes Pokemon possible. I sat down with a caster for Pokemon, Joe Brown, to find out what we all need to know before we watch Worlds. Let's see what he had to say. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Scraw VGC. I'm Scraw, and today we have a special guest with us, Joe Brown, one of the commentators for Pokemon Regionals, international events, and now the Worlds tournament. So, Joe, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Great. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to ask some questions of Joe, basically to get everyone caught up with this video. You should have everything you need to know what's going on with Worlds, who's who, what's going on. So, Joe, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
I'm Joe Brown. I'm from New Jersey, so the New York, New Jersey region of the country for VGC. Started playing in 2014 in X and Y. First regional was Philadelphia Regionals that year, 2014. And then in 2015, I went to the Boston World Championships, and I was inspired from that was like my first big official event like that, like just watching, and I was inspired by those casters. I said I had a background in sports broadcasting from college. I was like, I would love to get into commentary. So worked with my local community, Liberty Garden, and some other streamers and things for PCs and mid-season showdowns, some grassroots regionals as well. And here we are 7 years later, pretty much exactly, because that was August of 2015, so August of 2022. And I'll be headed to London to cast Worlds for my first ever World Championship.
All right, great. So what I wanted to ask first was about Worlds itself. A lot of people have been to a regional in their town. A lot of people have been to an international. Like, what's the atmosphere like at a Worlds compared to events like that?
So the atmosphere for Worlds is completely different than any other event that you can imagine. Like, you go to a regional and it's packed and there's a lot of people and there's a lot of Pokemon players and it's fun, but it still feels all right. They just rented out this section of the convention center. This section is Pokemon, and it's a fun time there. But Worlds, it feels like it's not true because there's other people in these big towns, but it feels like the whole town gets taken over for Pokemon. All the stuff outside the buildings, all the stuff inside, like you're renting out whole blocks of convention centers instead of individual sections of a convention center, right? So the atmosphere is like every person you run into for that weekend, you come in on Thursday, leave Sunday or Monday, every person you run into is a gigantic Pokemon fan, and you instantly have something in common with them. And when even if you're not competing, if you're just watching the competitions or playing inside events or like the London Open this year, you're gonna instantly have that connection with thousands and thousands and thousands of other people instantly. And it's just such a cool feeling compared to the hundreds or maybe a couple thousand that you would see at a regional.
Yeah, when I went to NAIC this year, I saw 2 or 3 people in LaGuardia that were just sitting down, like playing Pokemon Go or playing the TCG together. But I can't imagine something like that. It seems like such a big, exciting thing. I'm a little upset I can't go myself. Now the people always talk about what the best Pokemon is and things like that. But I mean, if someone like me went to an event with the best team, no matter what it is, I'm not going to win. So I think the real story for a lot of this is the players. So why don't you tell me a little bit about some of the big stories, the big arcs some of these players have gone on this year that come to mind, people should keep an eye out for during Worlds?
There's actually been a lot of different stories because this year has been 3 years long at this point, right? So back in August of 2019 in Washington, D.C., they announced at Worlds that the following year's World Championships would be in London to celebrate with Sword and Shield. And obviously that was not the case. They had to wait through 2020 and 2021, and now we're in 2022. So it was very weird that we have people who have qualified for the World Championships, earned enough championship points. Like I believe Jeremy Rodriguez was a player. There was at least like a handful of players that had so much CP from post Worlds 2019 that they qualified for this year in just 2019. Like that's how many regionals that they did well at and won and got the 400 championship points that they needed. So like they qualified for this Sword and Shield event on the Switch with their 3DS. Like that's how good of players they were 3 years ago. So I think that's really interesting to see how players from Sun and Moon that did well, like Ashton Cox, international champion, Jeremy Rodriguez, international champion, James Beck, like players that, were so dominant in that era compared to this new era here in 2022. And this is all the same regional circuit. Players like Joe Ugarte and Chung Jin Ping and other players that have really just taken this new Series 12 format by storm and just consistently top cut every event that they go to. I'm really, at least for NA's purposes, I'm really excited to see how those players back from 2019 are going to do against these new top players in 2022.
Now, someone who I made a video a little bit ago talking about people who from this last circuit, and somebody who I pegged as somebody who I think might win the whole thing was Jung Jin. He was playing Rinya Sun, and he had what was saw a number floating around somewhere like 32-3 in regionals international championships
Yeah,
with the team.
yeah, I think it
Something.
was something like that. It was some, yeah, including yeah. I think yeah, I think in Milwaukee, and he made top cut, and I can't remember where it was, but in Milwaukee at that time he was 27-2 with that Sun team. So yeah, he's incredible.
Is that something that we've seen before? Someone is playing like the same team like that and just going all the way through?
Yeah, so we actually saw it in the beginning of Sun and Moon. Gavin Michaels won back-to-back regionals. I'm pretty sure it was like 2 regionals in a row, and I think he used the exact same 6. He might have changed different Pokemon up maybe or moves up a little bit, but we actually did see a back-to-back like dominant run like that where he I think he won. I think he lost one set in two consecutive regionals or something like that. So it's definitely possible. People, trainers can go on a run like that if the team is the right meta call and if a player is so consistent with a certain team. Like I mentioned James Beck earlier, back in 2019, he got top 4 at the World Championships in DC. The entire year, we had 3 different formats that year: Sun, Moon, and Ultra. He in Ultra Series where mega evolutions were allowed, he didn't run a mega. He ran the same Tornadus Kyogre core team he ran for 8 months that he ran at Worlds without a mega when everyone else had access to mega evolutions. And like, if you are that comfortable with the team, like how Chung Jun potentially is with the Rainier Sun team, like it's definitely more beneficial to do that than just trying to play what everyone else says is the best, 6 Pokemon.
I'm glad you mentioned the idea of if a team's good for the meta, because this last month has been lights out on a lot of these pro players. A lot of them have been hiding, testing, uh, sequestered away, getting ready for Worlds. Should we expect a format like what we've seen with just a few techs here and there, or is this where something out of completely left field shows up?
I think Worlds is really where people wait to show off innovations that they've been waiting all season to show. Like if you think about some of the most iconic things, obviously you would think of Sejun Park with his Pachirisu at 2014 and how that was something that a lot of the field just was not prepared to deal with, because Follow Me is such low distribution anyway. You didn't think many Pokemon were going to use it. So, I think even in 2017 with Ryota, with his World Championship team, he had Choice Specs Tapu Fini, and for most of that season, people were running very supportive sets with like Wikiberry and Heal Pulse or Calm Mind, Leftovers, like something like that, just for the Tapu Fini to support the team. And he went all out on Choice Specs there. Obviously, he also had the greatest counter of all time with Brick Break Marowak to break the Alolan Ninetales Aurora Veil, which Ninetales was also a meta call that Sam Pendelis waited for Worlds to bring there too. So like you're like building upon this, like here's my secret tech, and it's going to beat somebody else's secret thing. And then the other thing I think of is the most recent Worlds in 2019 in DC was the second place finisher from Japan, had Umbreon on his team with Groudon for Sling Up the Sun, so he healed up even more and was a great counter into Necrozma and some of those really strong psychic types. So I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would expect to see something at Worlds that we have not really seen so far in the 2022 regional circuit yet.
Okay, and in your experience, how much do those you could start to leak out? Because for example, a few days ago, I was just messing around on ladder, and I played against like 7 or 8 Talonflames in a row, And I was like, did
Oh.
somebody find out something that someone was working on and just throw it everywhere, or is this just a random thing? Is that something that happens?
I don't know. Well, it's a good question. It's tough because like NAIC was at the end of June, right? And Worlds is until the middle of August. That's a month and a half stretch that there's no official events for these top trainers to really test their strategies against. So it's a lot of stuff online on the ladder. So I don't. I know everyone has like alt accounts and whatever, so they don't want to say who they are. But you would have to like. I'll just throw a random point like if Cradley becomes super busted. I'm not saying it will be. I just thought of if I don't know if Buffalant was super busted. I don't know. Just throwing out a Pokemon's name, and someone was waiting for to break it out at Worlds. Well, you had to practice with that team online, right? And if you're facing other top players, like if you're doing well, you're going to be at the top of the ladder. And if you're at the top of the ladder, you're facing other top players, so they see that Cradley or whatever, and then they can maybe get inspired by it as well. So that might have been an effect that you're talking about, that a great player was testing out Talonflame online, and it really opened the eyes to the rest of the player base that was facing off against them to see, oh, okay, it's got Gale Wings, and that Prankster Tailwind is faster than a Tornadus or Whimsicott's Tailwind when they're both at full HP on level 1 or on turn 1, excuse me, right? So that might have been the meta factor that impacted you when you were playing, when you saw all those Talonflames.
It was a very strange coincidence. Now, speaking of just Pokemon being better or worse in these situations, we're seeing a lot of things like a lot of Pokemon like Tornadus and Whimsicott. They're fighting for the same position. A lot of the format, kind of Whimsicott being a little more techy, Tornadus being a little more just stat heavy. And when Pokemon end up in that spot where they're like fighting over roles like that, does one tend to end up being favored over the other in at Worlds? Do we reach a point where it's like just having like that surprise factor matters? Like, where does that end up going usually? Or is this like a little?
Yeah, it's a tough question. It feels like there's never really a perfect answer. And I think specifically with Series 12 here this year, that's been one of the things that is so hard to nail down, because it's like, oh, well, I want Whimsicott because he has Prankster. But it's well, Tornadus also has Prankster and it has Icy Wind. It's like, yeah, but Grimmsnarl has Prankster and it's immune to Prankster. It's a dark type and it gets Light Screen to Reflect and it's really good there. So like there's a circle of the Pokemon that you can like keep running through. Like you try it with Whimsicott, try Tornadus, try Grimmsnarl or whatever, then you somehow get back on the Meowstic or Sableye. We've actually seen it a couple of events. We saw at our regional and at NAIC there was a Sableye Ditto team running around. So it's not like there's really a correct answer. It's what's the best team for your fit, or what's the best fit for your team, excuse me. Like it very well might be the case that Sableye is a better utility Pokemon for your team of 6 than the Whimsicott or the Tornadus might be, right? That's something that you have to weigh as a trainer when you're trying to build your perfect team, your perfect team synergy around. Is like, am I willing to sacrifice other things that maybe Grimmsnarl provides by not having him, that I'm now using Tornadus because of the Icy Wind, which is better synergy with, Kyogre or something like that. Whatever justification you'd have to run Tornadus over Grimmsnarl, that's something you have to now justify on your team.
Yeah, absolutely. So next thing I wanted to go over, and I know you said you were on a betting man, but I'm gonna ask you to make a few predictions here.
Oh, geez. All right.
First one. If you had to pick right now, who's your favorite to win the whole thing?
Oh, that's tough. So I've been pretty like confidently backing Joe Ugarte all season long. I think he's one of the best players in the world, and I've talked with him a lot about the metagame, and actually gotten like having like coaching conversations with him, sitting in Discord and talking about like what to expect at different regionals and whatnot. And he's a good friend, so it might like you shouldn't bet with your heart, right? That's probably like betting 101 is don't go with your heart. But like I really am feeling for Joe this year just how incredible he has been at every regional. He has more championship points than I'll ever have in my entire life, just in this one season. And he's had two really heartbreaking sets this year. So he's made top four at both ICs, which is incredible. But the first heartbreaking set was Salt Lake City, where he lost to Aaron Traylor, and I think it was like a 2.7% chance to happen, where he missed play rough, and Aaron got a double protect, and like just all these things compounding that he lost that set, and it was super heartbreaking. And then at NAIC in top four, he also got burned. I think he got crit on a certain turn that I can't remember exactly how it went down, but I remember I cast both of those matches, and I just felt absolutely heartbroken because I know how incredible of a player Joe is, and the game really was just not in his favor there. So I'm hoping we can get some type of storybook ending here, where he's went through the hardships of the circuit to get to Worlds in London. He can finally cap off with the victory.
I remember I was sitting in the crowd at NAIC, and I remember when the camera cut from the match to you, and I think it was Sierra, and your faces were both like, did that just happen?
Yeah, I felt bad because I think it was a heat wave, right? And I was like, oh, heat wave can burn. And then I see the animation. I was like, no, I made that happen, because I said it.
Yeah. No, I think there was something to do with an Incineroar, and like something weird happened with it. Maybe I'll pull that up and play it over this at some point.
Yeah, I can't remember what it was, but he got burned, and it just it kind of changed the whole like atmosphere. And wasn't that when didn't like the stream go down or something
in the middle
of top four, and it was just the audience that was there at NAIC that got to experience how insane this moment was. Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, it was like a burn and a miss or something like that. Now,
oh yeah, the press was always missed. That's true. Yeah.
Moving away from the players, I'm not gonna ask you to pick a pair, but if there's one restricted you expect to see in the final, let's say besides Zacian, or maybe Zacian. Yeah. Okay. Who do you think it's gonna be?
Yes, so this I can answer multiple of these questions here. So, I would I guess my one answer would answer multiple questions, I should say. My expectation is I believe it is more likely that a Calyrex wins Worlds than Zacian does. And my justification for that is everybody and their mother is going to bring Zacian, and you're going to kind of cannibalize each other there. But I think both Shadow Rider and Ice Rider are incredible restricted Pokemon. We just saw James Evans with the Groudon and Shadow Rider combination winning NAIC. So I also think the Calyrex Ice Rider team with Palkia and Gothitelle, whatever variation you want to use that Alex Underhill and his whole crew have been using all season. I think that core is incredible. Like Porygon 2 is super underrated. I think so. My bet would be that a Calyrex is more likely to win Worlds than a Zacian, or than Zacian would be. We'll see if I'm right. I'm probably wrong, but that's where I'm leaning right now.
I hope you're right. I think that's more exciting. I feel like we had this we were part of this conversation on Sunday night at NAIC. I feel like this discussion happened. Now,
I don't even remember.
I feel as though Calyrex Shadow Rider is a weird one, where it's like it needs a lot of help to get going, but when it does, it's just game just ends. Now,
I think it's definitely. With Shadow Rider, just to touch onto that, it's one of the only things that's actually faster than Zacian that can punish it because of the neutral Astral Barrages into it, and then if you don't go Choice Specs, you have Will-O-Wisp, and you can Will-O-Wisp that and really hinder it there. But if you are Specs, you just keep clicking it every single turn, and when you get a Grimne boost, that means the next one does more damage. So it has. You're right that it takes a little bit of setup to and needs a little help on the team, but once it gets going, it can really steamroll a whole match.
Yeah, both Calyrexes are very snowbally.
Yeah.
It's specifically we're talking about Will-O-Wisp. I've always been surprised by how bulky Calyrex feels once it gets a Will-O-Wisp off.
Yeah, by proxy of the other Pokemon doing half of their damage, you feel a little bulkier. You're like, oh man, maybe I don't need this four investment in my defense or whatever. I could take that out because it was just so bulky now.
Yeah, it always like a oh no moment when you do less than half to a Calyrex.
So you said you're not able to come, right? You're watching from home?
Yeah, I'm watching from home.
All right. So, what are you excited to see? What are you looking forward to, like from the commentary, like things that we can make sure we touch on while the broadcast is there? Because we got 4 days of coverage to talk about.
That's true. Well, what I'm excited about, I mean, I think it's been clear from the questions I've asked you. I'm very interested in just like the arc of players here. Like I've only been around in VGC for like a year ish. Like got a little into it during COVID. Didn't really like kind of fell off. Heard regionals were coming back. Heard there was one in New Jersey, and then I kind of got the bug there. Uh, and so for me, it's a lot of the people that are like that have been around for the last year. Like I feel like whenever I've seen like Chung Jun play, I'm like he knows something the rest of us don't. Just something in the way he plays his team that makes me feel like he deserves it. Uh, Joe's just a comedy of mishaps to him. So it'd be cool to see if he can get through that. Uh, kind of almost. I mean, I'm sure he'd rather this not happen because it's not probably not good for his heart. But I'd kind of like to see it all happen to him again and him manage to get squeezed through at that
Nah.
time.
Okay, yeah, he finally overcomes his demons. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
gets
just
crit, but he still wins.
yeah, just
Okay.
all the bad luck happens, but this time it's not enough. Uh,
I will say though, something to anticipate is Japan, since this is like you haven't really seen many of the previous worlds years. Japan is a total wild card because we haven't really in the West had to face them for the last two plus years, right? So you look at like the Japan national teams, and there's like Choice Scarfy Veltal and Choice Specs Kyogre and Assault Vest Raichu, and different things like that performed well there. So there's a big chance like you can root for Joe, you can root for Chungjin, all these players that you've been following in North America all year, and there's a chance that they could just get steamrolled by Japanese players that come out of nowhere with a strategy we weren't really prepared for in the West. So I think that's something that you should look forward to. Hopefully, we get to showcase it as well in London as the Japanese players.
yeah, I had seen when I looked at the Japan Nationals. I remember it was like Eternalist was like there was two of them in the top eight and stuff like that. And I was like, what's going on here? And I've heard that before, but like you said, I haven't really had a chance to see it yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, I don't really know what do you know of any like what Japanese players should I be keeping an eye on in particular if you can think of any right now?
Well, just I mean, if I don't know what other previous world championship or world champions they'll be there besides Naoto, because Naoto got top eight in the at Japan Nats this year. I'm not sure if like Ryota or anyone else is coming out just off the top of my head, but Naoto Mizubushi, who's the 2019 world champion, would be the one to think about the most for me. And like, I remember being there in 2019 when the player's name is escaping me right now. We got second, who had the Umbreon Primal Groudon team, but the buzz took over the whole room. Like the first round, round two, round three, round four, like everyone's like, "Did you see the Umbreon guy?" Like it really like manifested the excitement from everybody there in DC. Was like, this is incredible, and Umbreon is about to make Top Cut, and Umbreon's about to win. Like going into Sunday when he was in the finals, like the crowd was rooting for the Umbreon guy. Like it was I really love if something like that happened this year. Something to pay attention to.
Is the wild card, the dark horse Pokemon showing up there somewhere? Yeah, that'd be cool. The Alolan Marowak started showing up a little bit when the Trick Room got really popular. It'd be really cool to see something out of left field like that. Or there was the guy in Vancouver with the Alolan Executor that was showing up for a mere
Gary,
second.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was cool.
Yeah, I don't know what goes on in his brain, but he also got top 16 in Collinsville in 2020, right before the world shut down, with a Trapinch team. So is that Arena Trap? So I don't know how he was top 16 because I tried to play with it and I couldn't do it, but that was just hilarious. He's got a great brain.
It's like a budget Palkia almost. There's a lot of the same resistances. just don't put an ice cube near it.
No, definitely not.
But the other thing I'm very interested in seeing is I feel like there's a lot of very big players that like content type people, like people you like can't like interact with VGC at all without hearing about, like Wolf and Aaron Trailer, and Marcus and people like that in that group who like I hear so much about, and then they get like one top eight. I'm like, okay, I guess they don't really need to worry about it that much because they're already all locked up. So I want to see like what they look like when they like need to try, if that makes any sense. Like I played against Wolf round 1 of NAIC, and that was a very strange experience. I did not win. Spoilers. Uh, and I want to see like what happens with them because I feel like with Wolf in particular, he like found the like Lunala Groudon thing and just kind of stuck with it, not really changing too much for the rest of the season once he found something he liked during Jersey.
Yeah. Well, especially with Wolf and Aaron and Marcus, they're all in like the same team building friend group, right? So they probably share a lot of strategies together and could very well come to Worlds with the exact same six if they, are all three of them are confident enough in their team doing it or doing well. So that would be like, you can kind of see, all right, what's Wolf running? Oh, is this what Marcus has? Oh, okay, what's there? It can kind of it's kind of cool with Worlds. You can build in cores like that because you're all trying to help each other out.
Yeah, now this might be I think we'll wrap up soon, but this is something that you might be able to comment on. I've played a lot of other games competitively. Like there was this tabletop game, Guild Ball. I was top 10 in the world at, much smaller than Pokemon, so not that big of a feat. Play a lot of competitive Magic, a lot of card games, and in Pokemon, I have noticed, and this is a conversation I've had with a few people now. There's just a lot more of an emphasis on like keeping things secret. Where in a lot of other games I've played, the emphasis seems to be like hiding things is bad because then they'll get iterated on and you end up with a suboptimal version of what you're doing. Uh, can you comment on why you think why it might be that way? Is it just something about the way the game works? Is it a culture thing?
That's a very like fair way of putting it as well because I would think like I have played other competitive games and you want as much information out there as possible and the the mental advantage it doesn't seem like is that big of a or as important in some other games as it is in Pokemon, but specifically VGC. I don't want to talk on how TCG operates because I know they do have tech cards. Like they're like, oh, I'm going to put this in for the Bussy matchup, or I'm going to put this in for the Palkia matchup, something like that. So it still exists there. I'm just not sure how secretive they are in TCG. But for VGC, I think the the mental like strain each turn takes in a VGC match. Let's say the average VGC game lasts 5.5 turns. I don't know if that's the actual accurate thing, but especially with the restricteds and how powerful and Dynamax and weakness policy and everything like that, potentially let's say 5.5 turns. And there's a thing in Magic or Pokemon TCG or other games that if someone reveals that tech card but a Magic game lasts 12 turns, maybe you still have time to get around that tech card, right? But if you like the thing I think of, as I mentioned earlier, 2017 Worlds, Brick Break, Alolan Marowak, the Alolan Ninetales was Aurora Veil. It set up Light Screen and Reflect at the same time, and he did it for 8 turns because he had Light Clay. And it's what helped Sam get to the finals. And the fact that I don't know if he didn't know Ryota had Brick Break or he just didn't have the information or forgot about it or something like that. But Ryota doesn't win that match, I don't think, without brick breaking away the Aurora Veil and actually doing the regular amount of damage there. So the fact that VGC is only 4, 5, 6, 7 turns per game, that brick break or that random ice beam on a Pokemon, like I think back in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, Landers was obviously king. People in my locals in Brooklyn and in New Jersey, they started running like Ice Beam on Latias or Ice Beam on anybody that could get an Ice move. Just, even having Hidden Power Ice on your own Landers to deal with the other Landers, right? The impact that Ice Beam had on the Landers, because the game only lasts 5 turns, is more important to hide and to use to your advantage than in some of these other competitive games where just because somebody has an advantage over you, it doesn't mean the game is an insta loss that way. And I do often wonder why people keep things so secret so often, but then when you keep seeing that it works, like for example, Naoto in 2019 had Dragon Claw on on his primal Groudon. Same with James Evans on his Groudon with Shadow Claw, right? Because the Shadow Claw was there to deal with the ghost types like Lunala and Calyrex there. The Dragon Claw was there that after Mega Rayquaza used Dragon Ascent, you had enough HP and defense to live the hit. Rayquaza goes to -1 defense, and Dragon Claw is a one-hit KO no matter what. That's what the tech was for. So he doesn't want to go flaunting around to everybody saying, I have a Mega Rayquaza answer that nobody else does. And that's what helped, propel him into Top Cut. And by then, everyone knew the tech of the Dragon Claw. But those things, like, if it helped you win around early without information, even if people know later, they still might not have the answer for it in round 7, even if it helped you win in round 2, right? So I think that's why, sorry for the long-winded answer on it, but any advantage you can get in VGC just feels so impactful because each turn is so significant.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. It really boils down to how many actions, I suppose, actually happen in a game. So that makes a lot of sense. All right, Joe. Well, unless
so just real quick, I'll give you an
course.
example. In TCG, I forget which worlds it was, or if it was an IC or whatever, or Nats. It was one year. Seismitoad EX was just like the dominant deck, and it's a water type, right? It's weak to grass. And there was a Genesect Virizion deck that were both grass types, and therefore grass beats water, right? So you see that the expectation going into that match was the Genesect Virizion deck was going to stomp the Seismitoad. And he actually won, even though he was weak to grass and his whole deck was based around Seismitoad. He won because he was able to stall it out with Quaking Punch and whatever other ways it was done. So even in that case where you would think he had a bad matchup, the game was still long enough for him to actually come out on top. Where if you have a team with 5 ground weaknesses in VGC and you face a Groudon, like it's gonna have a rough time, right?
That makes a lot of sense. Like, it feels like it's a matter of the amount of actions that happen, right? Because, like, there's very few things in a trading card game that's going to, like, disrupt you and punish and stop and actually, like, put you closer to losing at the same time, right? Like, I think of Magic with sideboard cards. They all say, you can't do a thing, not you can't do a thing, and also...
And I win instantly, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to the
and
Dragon
the odds, the probability that you're always drawing exactly into the correct card you need every single time. You have all 60 different cards where I could click that Ice Beam anytime I want when my Pokemon is on the field like that. I don't need to draw into Ice Beam to have the counter.
Yeah, there's no time to find an answer. Like you said, no, I think I've had this conversation a few times, and a lot of times it's just been people saying things like, oh, it's because they're not going to get anything from random people knowing about it, but I think the way you explained it makes perfect sense. All right, Joe, I think that's really... I don't want to keep you too long. We've already been talking for a little over a half hour, so why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a fun conversation, so I appreciate you reaching out for us to have this chat. So you can see me on Twitter at Xeminan. That's XEMINAN. That's my handle. It's also my handle, Xeminan, for Twitch. I stream sometimes. I was currently doing a BDSP Nuzlocke a couple weeks ago that I have to finish at this point. So those are probably the 2 main places you can see me. I think I'm Xeminan pretty much anywhere on the internet there. So thanks.
All right, Joe. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for talking to me, and hopefully everyone will see you at Worlds when you tell everyone what's going on then.